knows his opponents so well, so he'll be able to start targeting the weaknesses. And actually, I said the Queen's Pawn, but it's not. It's the English. That's right.
The most played opening on the tour.
Yeah, it's quite funny how they've all been surprised by that fact, but they all play it.
They all play it. Yeah.
It's a definite trend, and maybe it's in honour of Carl here in the studio joining us. The English opening. And, OK, how will Ding react? Wei Yi react. He might be trying to transpose into the Queen's Gambit declined, or at least a variant of the Queen's Gambit declined. Instead, we see white fianchetto his bishop onto the long diagonal, and very, very solid setup from Wei Yi. This was one I've had myself just countless times. White doesn't take any risk at all in the opening, and now white is pretty flexible which pawn to push in the centre of the board. It could transpose to the Catalan opening, one of Ding's favourites, but maybe Wei Yi will expect that, so a bit of mind games. And it does transpose to the Catalan opening, a branch of the Queen's Gambit declined.
And Wei Yi, he has 10 points. He is in sole lead in the tournament. He won 3 games yesterday. Ding also had a very good start to the tournament on 8 points. Is these 2 players that you are very familiar with, Carl?
Certainly I follow them online, like I do most of the elite players, but it's quite interesting to see the change in chess style from my day, if you like, all the C4s. You know, E4 used to be the move to play to try to win, and now it's D4 or knight F3 or something else, and it's very hard to break these positions down. The fianchettoed bishop there on the G2 square, it's very difficult to break in, so maybe it's a longer game here.
Yeah, definitely. There's only been one trade of pawns, and with this last bishop retreat, which is very mysterious, actually, from Ding, moving this dark square bishop twice, he's saying no exchanges. He thinks that white has a small space advantage because white's pawn in the centre of the board covers a lot of squares. Black maybe less influence on those central squares. And he's just saying exactly what Carl's indicating there, just keeping pieces on the board, going for a long grind. So we could be here for a while as Ding tries to eke out a tiny advantage. Normally white is pretty safe here, but black is rock solid.
And I'm just checking out my database, and the two have actually played each other with the exact same colour, the exact same position, just last month in April in this match that you referenced. And that particular game ended in a draw. But here we go. Wei Yi, by moving the queen, has actually deviated from their original game. And this is his improvement. I love it when the players, you know, follow their lines and then they play something different. And you're like, oh, now we get to see your preparation.
Mind games, maybe. Wei Yi just saying, OK, I've studied this all before. It's not new to me. And, OK, Ding took a few seconds to compose himself and brings out his knight. Very logical. White would love to throw more pawns forward in the centre of the board, if possible. Simon, what are your thoughts on this type of position? Any experience here?
Not personally. I mean, I've looked at a lot of games like this, and sometimes I get in these kind of structures. Very solid. I think, as Carl said, it's the new trend to try and win now, playing these longer types of games. E4, unfortunately, in move 1 at elite level has kind of been worked out so well, especially with the Berlin coming around since 2000, that is considered quite drawish. I mean, you know, the one thing I found quite fascinating about the players from China, though, is, you know, they've shot up in the last sort of 20 years or so from nowhere. And, you know, it's said that their team spirit is incredible. So they work everything together. They share secrets. They have this incredible sort of mutual learning together, which maybe other countries could certainly benefit from. You know, I know in England it's all kind of like everyone for themselves. Unfortunately, a little bit. You know, it shouldn't be, but that's maybe why they've got so many great players.
Because they have that super strong women's team as well, right?
Yeah.
The strongest women's team in the world must be.
Yeah, and I've been asking them about this because, you know, because we hear about those kind of rumours, you know, this chess house where all the top players are studying.
Really?
Yeah, and so the women's team actually revealed to me that they themselves actually didn't conform to that whole stereotype. That maybe the men's team, yes, but for the women's team, they were very much independent. They were based on regions. So some of them were Shanghai, and those in Shanghai worked together and were very good friends, but the others in different parts of the country also worked with their set of trainers. So I was like, because I was grilling them on everything. I was like, tell me more, tell me more. I just want to know absolutely everything. But yeah,
I imagine it's like the, spoiler alert, but the final episode of The Queen's Gambit where, you know, they get together and they kind of pool their resources and kind of support each other. And I've got no doubt if Ding does indeed play in the candidates, that Wei Yi is going to be helping him, maybe with some opening knowledge, maybe with some inside kind of information about some kind of specifics on the opponents.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's one thing that, as Simon says, we definitely don't do in England, and I think a lot of countries didn't do until recently, but that's another reason that India, for example, have suddenly shot up in the last 10 years, because it's teamwork, and they don't treat each other as rivals. They just think, OK, the end goal is becoming the best in the world, so why not kind of use each other to reach that destination?
And it must be a lot of fun as well, working together in a team, because it can be, we've talked about it, chess can be a lonely sport.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's so much more fun to kind of be part of a group and just to kind of share your ideas, use them as a springboard just to get creative. And I also heard another rumour. I don't know how true this is, but I'll put it out there. It says basically that once you reach a certain age, you're kind of asked to retire and take on teaching responsibilities.
In China?
Yeah.
What's the age? I'm interested now.
20.
21? Yeah, so you were going to... How old is Ding? I don't know how old he is, but clearly he's
Wei Yi is 22.
Wei Yi's 22.
And Ding is born in 1992, so,
so
he's maybe 29.
He's ancient then. So, yeah. So.
It's an interesting philosophy. It might be...
It's a great idea, yeah.
It might be a fantastic idea to have the top
29.
players.
29,
Yeah.
Might have, top players, just once they reach their peak, say, well, great, inspire the minds.
I remember Alexander Grishchuk, Sasha, was telling me when I was doing commentary with him, he was saying, there's this saying that, the best players play, and then those who are not the best players are lost it a little bit. Yeah. They teach, and then everyone else commentates. So the commentators are at the bottom, I'm afraid, guys.
But now you can make Chessable courses as well.
Yes, that's right.
And
I don't believe that, I have to say. Just want to put it out there.
How about team spirit in prisons, Carl? Is it every man or woman for him or herself, or do they work together as well?
It's very, very interesting. I mean, prison, as anyone can imagine, is a pretty lonely place at times, and there are different groups of people that stick together or don't. But when you get them in a room playing chess, the officers often say to me, I've never seen this before. These people would never mix normally. It's a quiet pastime, and I've been to some prisons where I've given a simul, and they've come to me with a file of my games that they've had the officers download and say, we've done some work on you. We know you play the French defence, and so we're playing that today. Of course, I then point out that they've made their first mistake, and I've said, well, now I won't play the French today, so all of that work has gone down the bin. But then they work together, and so you can imagine it. The male prisons particularly, very testosterone-filled. There's lots of comments you can hear down the end, I've got him, I've got his queen, I'm going to hammer him, he's going down, and all that. And it's just trash talk. And they do work together, and if one of them gets the result, they share the joy in that. And so it's good. It's really good when they do that as well, because they've achieved something.
Yeah.
And it is just interesting to note that the first time somebody beat me, I gave them credit, and they didn't want to take it because they'd not been given credit really in their life before. And I demonstrated by playing the moves that they did deserve to beat me, they did play fairly, and they did deserve their book prize. And, that's part of the joy of it.
Wow. Oh, so many of the cool stories we're going to hear from you today, Carl. And these two teammates in China, but in this game, and we have a smile from Ding. I wonder what that is about. But in this game, they are opponents, and we did have a few moves. This is still looking like that long game.
I think, yes, it's going to be a long game, but it is a critical moment, and maybe that's why Ding is smiling. He knows he's been caught out in Wei Yi's homework in his opening preparation. Just look at the clock times. Ding now, he spent around 5 minutes. Wei Yi has 1 minute more than he started the game with, and Black's last move is not an obvious one either. We just have to jump in to show what's happened over the last few turns. We were discussing it around here, saying it's going to be a long game. We're not sure exactly which pieces are going to get traded off, which pawns are going to push, but I think White was indeed ready to start throwing pawns forward in the centre of the board. So before this happened, Wei Yi decided, OK, if White pushes this pawn forward, Black is going to be cramped for space. When you're cramped for space, you should trade things off. So he captured this White knight, the bishop was recaptured, and instead of defending this pawn, which it looks like this pawn is up for grabs, simply. Instead of that, Wei Yi counterattacked against White's pawn in the centre of the board. And now, for example, if the White bishop takes this pawn, Black, I think his plan is a bit sneaky. He wants to jump in with his knight, giving up his knight, attacking this bishop. But if the knight is captured, then black's rook gets super active. And it's variations like this that Wei Yi has probably studied before with a computer. He's probably realized that, okay, he can sacrifice pawns, go active with the black rook. And the reason Ding, I think, was smiling is because he knew that he couldn't continue walking into the lion's den, and he had to avoid Wei Yi's preparation. So instead of capturing this this black pawn, he's decided, okay, let's just shuffle the queen forward. And now, if the white pawn is captured in the center of the board, I think only then will he consider maybe taking this pawn, or maybe first throwing his bishop to attack the black rook, kick it back, and when it retreats, then grab a pawn. Lots of moves there, but it's all about which pawn is more valuable in the current position. Is it white central pawn, or is it this black pawn that's eyed up by the light squared bishop? And if Wei Yi wants a longer game, then he'll maybe just push forward, block this bishop out. If he wants to really solve black's problems quickly, then maybe he'll consider taking this pawn, but that is by far the riskier option.
Okay. Well, the bar is quite calm still, slightly over to Wei Yi's side. And Ding is definitely the player who spent the most time in this opening. Wei Yi played very fast.
Yeah, and
Big bottle of water, isn't it, as well? Wow.
That is a big
Super size.
always hydrate when you're playing chess.
Yeah, definitely. Whoa. So,
It could be that he's a very small person, of course.
yeah, and it's a normal size. Yeah.
Absolutely. The bottle's
Very small,
normal.
wouldn't he? So, yeah.
I kind of want to check Ding Liren's height as well now. I think that's on there.
You just don't know.
Let's see.
That's just a half-litre bottle.
While you're checking, Guy, whilst I'm in Esteem's company, I'd like to ask a question. Do you think the Chinese believe that they could have the next male world champion? Do you think that they actually believe that they could do it? You've got people like Ali Reza Firuza and others. Do you really think they believe they can do it?
Yeah.
I think so. I think the proof as well was just last month when Ding, he was inactive technically. He was going to miss out on this place in the candidates, and they hadn't organised any over-the-board tournaments in China for almost 2 years. And then suddenly, just for Ding, just to get him into the candidates, they organised all these events. So they must believe in him. And if not him, then maybe you'll have to go down a generation or two to find the next prospect. But
I remember one story, David. It's maybe not a great story, but when you were, I don't know if you want to mention it, but it did weirdly make me laugh in a very bad way. But maybe it's up to you,
I'm looking
David.
forward to this now.
Oh, I don't know.
yeah, it's. I won't name the arbiter involved, but in 2016, England were playing China in the Olympiad, and it was a crucial game. We were kind of locked on points, and we were doing quite well at the time, England. But I'm known for arriving a bit late. I think that's one of the first times in my life I've arrived the first to a game. So the England team, the Chinese team, no one had arrived. I sat down on the England side of the board, and the arbiter was just looking at me. So I wrote down my name, my stuff, and he came up to me. He said, "Sorry, you're sitting on the wrong side." And I was like, "No, I'm playing for England." He was like, "No, you're sitting on the wrong side.
Didn't
China,
believe you.
it's China."
That's pretty bad, yeah. It's pretty bad.
And only when I showed him my badge, only when I got my team captain to come and tell him proof, then he finally believed me. But I was kind of saved by Ding arriving and shaking my hand and sitting down. Then he realised.
How did you get on against Ding?
It was a draw.
Draw,
yeah.
okay.
I was watching that because I wasn't playing. I was actually watching
Big
that
game.
with one of our participants, Gawain Jones, and England beat China in that match.
Wow.
And I
Really?
remember,
That's incredible.
I remember
do
Gawain and I
yeah.
literally hugged each other and jumped for joy, and we're like, "Oh my goodness me!" I think maybe David was in the room as well.
Maybe.
I have a feeling, yeah.
You maybe had finished the
He
game.
finished quite early.
Yeah, it was quite a quick draw. I actually had an advantage as black very early on after the opening from something not too dissimilar to this. But, okay, as in a team event, as black, a draw is great. I was outrated by 200 points against Ding, so I thought, okay, let's take the draw, and we won the match.
Yeah.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah, so,
Super strong Chinese team.
yeah, that was a kind of a rollercoaster day for me. And the arbiter did apologise afterwards. So.
Okay, good.
A couple of moves, and actually one of the options we did mention, there has been a trade of pawns. So white's central pawn has disappeared, and black's pawn on the b file has disappeared. White does have the bishop pair, and things are starting to open up. So if Wei Yi isn't accurate here, then just white having the two bishops could be a bit of a factor. But black is very active. Black has a kind of cluster of pieces in the centre of the board on the dark squares, and yeah, still in the balance.
David, I'm butting in like a simple-minded horse here, I know,
Do it,
but just
Carl.
from the perspective of sort of my grade of players, if I'm coaching juniors, for example, I might look at that position and say, just for a moment, in your head, take away all of the pieces and leave the pawns. And just look at the pawn structure. And so black has got those two separated pawns over on the queen side, and white has got pawns together, if you like, as friends, with 2 on the left and the 4 on the right. And if it got down to an end game where all the pieces were off, whilst there's no guarantees, I would like to think that I would probably prefer to play white.
Definitely.
Because the pawn on c7 down there is a target, and in fact on a5. So black must be aware of this and must be wanting to make something happen before they got to that stage.
Definitely, exactly. And that's why we talk about kind of long-term positional strategic play. And that's exactly what Carl's talking about there. The pawns are a long-term target. Also, white has these 2 great bishops, which will kind of control a lot of squares long-term. And that's why black has to play dynamically, has to be kind of very energetic with the play. You can't just trade everything off. You can't, for example, trade off pieces for no reason. You have to maybe get all your pieces to active squares. For now, these 3 pieces create a nice kind of impression, controlling a lot of squares, maybe hinting at attacking some stuff later on. But yeah, it's very much black has to play for the short term. Long term, white is the one with all the chances.
And he has now finally started thinking, what could be a plan for him here?
Yeah, and he's just jumped in, a bit of a flashy move here. He's jumped in with the black knight. This is a double attack, hitting the rook in the corner and hitting the bishop. It looks like the knight is up for grabs, but if white takes it, then the bishop drops. The white queen is lured away and no protection of the bishop. So actually here, I talked about the bishop pair. Now it's opposite colour bishops. So long term, maybe black is feeling a bit safer. It's going to be very hard to attack these 2 pawns while black kind of keeps his dark-squared bishop on the board. So looks like a very solid decision by Wei Yi. He just spent a bit of time calculating this move, but it does indeed work. And we will see some exchanges, but it's exchanges that kind of favour black here. He's going to get rid of this key dark-squared bishop for white.
Okay.
Yes, a great move by Wei Yi there. And one of the kind of like calling cards of the Chinese players is they're very, very good at calculation and tactics and spotting these little opportunities. And it's a problem piece has been removed from the board. And now I think the pawn structure doesn't matter so much because they're all going to be on dark squares. And black has a dark square bishop.
Yeah, I think while knights remain on the board, maybe the black pawn structure is still not so great. You can imagine the white knight jumping around and maybe attacking some pawns later on. But if black can exchange knights off the board now, I think that would lock down a draw.
Yeah, I mean,
And pieces are coming off the board.
yeah, I suppose black's got this nice control over the queen side as well. I mean, there are some weaknesses in white's position. If you look at black's bishop, that bishop is in a lovely square and you can't kick that bishop away. So there are some positives about having these pawns on the queen side for black and, well, opposite coloured bishops. It does often indicate it will be a draw. So more exchanges. I expect it's heading that way, but, you know, probably.
Yeah, and sometimes this is all down to the opening because some openings are just really tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
You know, as white, you don't get too much. As black, maybe you struggle against certain pressures. And I'm just mentioning this because, you know, I don't think Ding has got that much, is entirely happy with how he's done. He's opened with the white pieces. And, of course, our quiz of the day, that's my link, is, of course, what opening move annoys you the most?
Yes.
And everyone is coming up with answers. And Maruko actually says that the most annoying thing is when you play e4, e5, which is pawn to king 4. Pawn moves 2 squares forward. And then white plays the bomb cloud. King goes to the e2. And he goes, the worst thing is that if you lose against this, you feel like the worst player in the world. I feel you. I feel you totally.
The bomb cloud. We remember that from the last season in the tour. Hikaru and Magnus playing that against each other.
At least they drew, though.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think Magnus has played the bomb cloud in all seriousness and won.
Yeah.
And you feel like, oh, goodness me.
Yeah,
It's worth remembering that the difference is they know what they're doing.
That's true. Ooh, yeah.
It's definitely one not to recommend, not to try at home. The bomb
Yeah,
cloud, I think.
definitely. But also, I mean, just thinking back to last month's tour event where Magnus opened with that 1 F3, which is kind of like a joke opening.
Yeah.
And
It must be annoying to face, right?
yeah, and he played against Duda, and Duda was just like totally
The
defeated.
rest of the day,
Yeah.
it just, yeah.
It didn't work his way, and then he kind of quickly lost game 3, and that was it. I mean, but of course, he managed to bounce back and win the tournament, but yeah, it was a good psychological ploy.
So how about you guys? Worst move that you face in games?
I'd probably say similar, actually. I mean, if you're playing someone and they play something completely ridiculous against you, it's like, oh, come on, you know. It's like, you know, you're kind of taking the mickey a little bit.
Disrespectful, kind of?
A little bit, I think, yeah. I mean, I was getting a quick game of chess in earlier and I was playing some French guy and, you know, we got to Rook and King versus Rook and King, similar, and which is a dead draw. And the guy just played on and I'm just like, oh, come on, you must have better things to do with your life. So, not that I'm bitter or annoyed about it at all.
Just trying to win on time, that guy.
Yeah, we both had 30 seconds left, and I just like, I can't be bothered, you know. So just some of these little things can be a little bit disrespectful.
Yeah.
You know, they get, you know, make you a bit angry. So, and I think if someone did that against me, it'd be like, okay, yeah, very funny, you're hilarious, so funny, yeah, it hasn't been seen before, but you're not really thinking that. And if you lose, it's even worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think the guy had a good point with his Twitter post. Very good point.
Very good point, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's when my opponent, when I'm playing black, when I'm playing someone maybe slightly lower rated than me, when they just try and draw. And it's so hard sometimes to create winning chances with the black pieces in kind of must-win situations. Because I mean, you guys know me, I like to play long games where it's kind of try and squeeze out any potential winning chances, but it's tricky.
Yeah.
If the opponent is dead set on just trading everything off, it can be hard to keep the game alive.
Yeah.
The worst is when online, when they push all their pawns onto one row, and they do that, you know, they keep it nice and solid and like, come on, let's see what you're going to do. And I hate that because they're just playing to win on time. That's it. Oh,
Annoying. How about you, Carl?
Well, there is an opening called The Grob.
Never heard about it.
Played in the old days, as I'm here to talk about the old days, obviously, and it was played in the old days, and it's basically equivalent to a slap in the face with a wet haddock. G4, this move, pawn to G4, which flies in the face of everything you ever learned about chess and says, I don't care about you, I'm just going to play my game and I'll beat you. And somebody played it against me not too long ago. Fair enough, they were an international master and they did win, but I was still really annoyed. You may be an IM, but you play G4 against me.
Oh,
And we're about to see a draw by
we're about to
repetition.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Everything's come off the board, opposite colour bishops, nothing to do, and it is a draw.
All right.